Hello and welcome to another live session, webinar this week. I have a special treat planned, something I've been meaning to do for a long time, and that is to read a chapter from my book. So this has been a request every so often, and I'm going to do it today. So I hope everyone is doing well and being present. So much of our suffering and our misery is from not being present, from being lost in thought. And we're just wired and conditioned to do that, spend at least half, if not 2/3 of our time lost in thought about things that are irrelevant to whatever task we're doing. So this separateness, the separation from what's happening, it's not just the thoughts of being lost and living in the past, living in the future, and that's usually where fearful thoughts arise and regrets arise, and other irrelevant things that aren't real arise. But there's something about just not being here. That in itself is hurtful to nature, to ourselves. We are nature. There's something about it that isn't quite right. And then things don't work as smoothly. Then that's when accidents happen. I've actually researched this topic quite a bit and talked to people who work with people in all kinds of settings, including adventure travel, and outdoors, and tour guides, and other places where people get hurt. And unanimous agreement consensus is that it's mostly it happens when people aren't paying attention. We say that so flippantly. Oh, of course not. They weren't paying attention. What does that actually mean? It's they weren't present. When we're really connected to our senses and alert, if you look out into the animal world, they're all alert and they're always aware of their environment. And when we do that, a lot less happens that isn't, desirable. There's here in Indonesia, I've spoken with, I've had certain situations with locals where, well, what if, I'd be the one as the Westerner, I'd be one. Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And their response is always, well, just pay attention. And that is a great mantra. Just to pay attention, then your life protects you. Then you're in a safe bubble as long as you're present. So, with that said, I'm going to pick up the book, and someone recommended the chapter on fear. And that is, I think, a topic that we can all relate to. We've all experienced it. It's nothing foreign to us. It's probably the emotion that stands in the way from us, living our best life, living our most adventurous and magical life. And when you examine fear very closely, you can kind of see how it's right at the threshold of you making a change or making a shift or trying something new. It's like right there when you're experiencing the fear is when you're up, right at the point of having to make a decision and take action or remain in inaction. And so ultimately it's a sign that you're really, really, really close. You're on the threshold. So now you need something to push you over. Yes. Biggest fear is the one I think I should do. Yeah, very good, Ida. Um, that's also, you could interpret it that way, is that when you are fearful, when you are nervous, it means um, this is something you should do because it's important to you. There's a growth opportunity there. In tennis, which I'm a big tennis nut, they often ask, the greats of the sport who have been around for many years, if they still get nervous ahead of a big match, and they all do. And the way that sports psychologists and others help reframe that fear, that nervousness, is to interpret it as it's meaningful. You wouldn't be nervous if it didn't meant something, that it didn't have like it still sends tingles or shivers down your spine, and it would be a bad sign if it didn't, because then you're just not as engaged. It doesn't matter anymore. But when it does matter. It's meaningful. It's important for you, and that's a good sign. So whenever we feel fear cropping up, it's the same thing. It's meaningful. There's something there that we need to take that step, because there's growth. Just to put it generally, there's some opportunity for growth and healing that has to happen to get to the growth. Yeah, we have to face our biggest fears sooner or later. And most of the time, if not all the time, because we linger and we sit on those fears, we let them fester and we let them grow, they become much bigger than they actually are. When we do finally, because we have to eventually, otherwise we get really a jumbled mess. When we do finally take that step, then it never seems to be as bad as we expected it to be. Just because we've been sitting on it and our mind makes stuff up. And our mind makes stuff up that is just not real. Anything we make up in our mind is not real. Anything that we project into some future situation is not real. Even if it turns out same or similar, it's going to be different. The nature of something that's real is very different than what we make up in our heads. You cannot properly anticipate a situation just by thinking about it. It's the feel of it. Feel of it is very, the feel of real is just so different than when you're sitting on the couch or laying in bed and you're having all these thoughts, or you're driving and you get lost in thought. That's not the setting of the situation. That when it happens, you'll be somewhere else. You'll be a different mood, different body. You're shedding cells every day. You won't be the person you are previously when you're thinking about stuff incessantly and driving yourself nuts. So you're going to be a different person. The other people who are involved are going to be different people. You just can't predict the future. It's essentially what we do when we stress about things, trying to predict the future. All right, here we go. I might slip into my reading voice here, and that comes from having done the audiobook and actually been a voice actor in the past as well. And sometimes it sounds funny. I've been told. Try to keep it natural. All right. Fear, page 67. It shouldn't come as a surprise that all fear comes from not being you. When you're in your headspace, confused about who you are, questioning your decisions, trying to please outside voices, and living for outcomes, it's no wonder that there's an undercurrent of fear in everything you do. You fear not getting the things you want because your future happiness depends on them. You fear losing the belongings you've attached your self-worth to. You fear abandonment by the people you rely on for feeling loved. And above all, you fear the things that could happen. You might not take a chance because you could fail. You might stay in a mediocre relationship because starting over could be worse. You might pass up an opportunity because you could be successful. As long as you're in your head, you can learn to fear anything and everything. Indeed, what you fear is often the complete opposite of your actual circumstances. You fear being lonely even though you're in a relationship. You fear not having things even though you have them. You fear not getting it all done despite having achieved so much. You fear death even though you're alive. You can even fear getting healthy because being sick has become part of your identity. Most fears are not about what is in front of you, but what you imagine in your mind. The irrational mind is a master of irrational fears. Some people even fear the journey of self-realization. They would rather not peel back the layers of stuck feelings for fear of what they might find. Of course, you can't keep a lid on your evolution forever. You're bound to look in the mirror sooner or later. Life is that mirror. Even if you don't take a proactive approach to self-realization, eventually life gives you the necessary push and all your stuff comes bubbling up. You cannot escape your fears. You must confront them at some point, or else the accumulated suffering becomes unbearable. Fears are the most rigid, stuck feelings that keep you out of the flow and separate from your naturally fearless state. Most of your journey consists of facing your fears. Ultimately, fear is just like any other emotion. No matter how deep-seated a fear may be, you can learn to release it simply by observing your sensations. That said, if you've been pushing away certain fears for a long time, perhaps since childhood, they may run so deep that bringing them to the surface can be overwhelming. Should this be the case, never hesitate to seek support. Keep exploring options until you find what works for you. Most important is you take charge of your emotional well-being and that you no longer feel like a victim. As liberating and healing as it is to release existing fears, it's equally important to keep from developing new ones. The most effective way to prevent new fears from cropping up is to be you. When you listen to your inner voice, there is no opportunity for fear to slip in. You see circumstances as they are and move forward by taking clear action. You know what's true for you and don't feel threatened by the truth of others. You're not lost in regrets about yesterday and have no doubts about what tomorrow may bring. You know, as long as you're being you, there is nothing to fear. You're in the best hands possible. So, what that brings up for me is the fear really is an illusion. At the same time, it's the trigger, if you will, to tell you there's something real there, something that's stuck there, something that needs healing inside of you. So all of our emotions are indicators, are pointers, are the feedback mechanism that life has instilled in us to help us understand ourselves better. And fear is one of the most prominent triggers of those emotions. Now, when we feel fearful, it has something to tell us. So the most healthy general attitude towards life in all situations is to ask ourselves whenever we feel something, what is this telling me about myself? What is life pointing out in me? Where do I have work to do? So we don't have to go looking for it. The challenges are triggers. They come right to us just by living. They're unavoidable. You could be in a cave in the mountains and you would still have whatever needs to surface. So that's where the inner work comes from. We have a lot of things to do all day long, yet there's this constant reminder in the doing of things that shows us, okay, we need to put some attention over here or over there. And by attention, I mean having the tools to be able to manage and ideally release stuck feelings, as I call them. So fears, anything you feel triggered by, anxiety, stress, um, everything shows up as a sensation in your body. So it could be your heart thumping, it could be the hair on the back of your neck bristling, it could be sweat, hot flashes, whatever it is that denotes fear in your body. Notice it. Start noticing it. When you can notice where you feel the sensation, that's the physical representation of fear, then you can stay on the side of awareness as opposed to getting pulled into the fear, into the feeling. That's when it gets typically scary because we're having to feel an uncomfortable feeling and we amplify it with our reaction to it. Oh, I don't want to feel this. Oh, why me? It's happening again. And just the whole thing gets much, much bigger than it actually is. And if you focus just on the sensation, then that's the fear. Just that's the contained feeling of fear without your adding to it. And when you start practicing this, and we'll do a meditation today that helps instill this, then you start to realize that 95% of your experience is your narrative that you put on top of the feeling, and that the feelings themselves are very manageable, very bearable. In fact, they're like, oh wow, I feel alive. They tell you that you're alive, if anything, but they're never so uncomfortable that they overwhelm you. So to stay on the side of awareness, to live from the awareness, that is what noticing is. Notice where you're feeling what. And then nothing can get to you because you are not your feelings. You're not the thoughts that might result in the feelings. You're an awareness. You're not your name. You're not the person that has a career, or you're not your body. You're not all those things. First thing is to recognize what your true nature is, your essence, and that is you're an awareness. You're a consciousness, an expression of the greater consciousness. And so when you honor that, then you're essentially sitting at the footsteps of God, if you will. And there's nothing to be afraid of there. You're on the throne or near the throne of the incredible infinite power of the forces of creation, of life. And there's no fear. You recognize yourself as infinite. You recognize yourself as omniscient and omnipotent, as omni. There's no singular thing that pulls you into it to the point where you identify with it. And it's only then when we're pulled into individual thoughts that we feel really small, because that's what being identified with a tiny little thought feels like. It feels small. It feels limited. It feels fearful. It's no wonder we feel lonely and crazy in there. And if we're most of the day lost in thought, one little thought and then the next and the next, they tend to have a whole wake of thoughts that come as a result of giving our attention to one, um, then we feel small and lonely and scared. Ayu, great question. What if you are still in survival mode? How to release fear? It's very hard to do that in survival mode. Hmm, great question. We'd have to look at each situation case by case to see what survival fear means to you. Right? What does that mean? Are we in survival mode when we're busy with our jobs and juggling a family and relationship and kids and taking care of parents and trying to get ahead and all that? Is that survival mode? Or are you really in a much more destitute place of having to down regulate your system first before you can really keep your attention on sensations, as I just described? So I would say the latter is more of an emergency state. But that's kind of very acute, and it's its own deserves its own focus and attention, and needs to happen, because it's if you're having panic attacks, things like that, um, then that might be not be the right time to be focused on your sensations, but your body's screaming, um, you need help in a bigger, more immediate way. So that would be a survival state for me. The rest of the time, um, it doesn't take much to start introducing stillness and mindfulness into your life. It's not separate from doing meditation, the however long we get a chance to sit, ideally every day, is not the only place where we can find stillness. In fact, that's just like going to the gym, where we nurture our awareness, our ability to be still, but really we want to apply it to all other situations in life, so that you bring a certain um, stillness and a certain bigness and a certain perspective to every situation. So when you walk into work meetings, or dealing with family, a partner, or with your kids, or neighbors, or calling the bank, all these situations are opportunities to practice being connected to your sensations. You need these situations to practice it. And it's just about getting a little bit of a glimpse of, oh, okay, so this is how it works. I stay in my awareness throughout the day, about the situations, about how they make me feel. And a little by little, you start to live more and more from this awareness. And it'll never just be, oh, I'm the super aware being floating through space, but rather maybe a third, 30% of you, maybe 50% of your awareness should just be with, how am I feeling? So you just start to develop more of a balance, where you are aware of your state of connectedness to your body. And that's where all the wisdom lies. That's telling you this situation resonates, this situation doesn't. Without that, you're left to use your mind. And the mind doesn't really have a compass built in. It just starts to compare and judge and label and convince itself that one thing is the truth over another. And it's too fickle, it's too flippant. The next moment you'll veer the other way. So the compass is the body, the wisdom is within. So you have to stay connected to that. It'll make your life so much easier. So if you're just leading a really busy life, start introducing an awareness of how you're feeling, simply by noticing, right? That when you meet somebody who triggers you, notice where that shows up. Before you get on an important call or walk into a meeting, notice where you feel it. Before you step onto the court, As I described, a tennis player might do is just notice where the anxiety or um, the where it's showing up. We're talking about feeling your natural feelings. This is not some altered state. It's not some voodoo magic. We're talking about returning to our natural state of just feeling our feelings without amplifying them, without being afraid of them. Really, we're just afraid of our own amplification of them. And just to stay connected to, oh, this is where I'm feeling it. And that's it. Don't judge it. There's no need to be afraid of it. The moment you try this a few times, you'll go like, oh my gosh, the sensation itself, the feeling itself is like nothing. I've just been blowing it out of proportions all this time. And that's what we do when we get lost in thought. But you no longer get lost in thought or get lost in thought less the more you notice just where you're feeling things, because then the feeling gets to rise and pass. And that's what all feelings do. They come and go unless we react to them with our story, with our amplification. So suddenly you just feel the ease and the flow of that. That's why expansion of the mind is one of the goals of spirituality. Yes. I don't know if we're expanding the mind. And again, words are just, limited. They're pointers. But we're definitely expanding something. Maybe I'd say we're limiting the mind. We're taking power back from the mind and living from a different place, from a deeper knowing, a deeper wisdom that isn't mental in nature, but that is our essence, right? That awareness, that greater consciousness, which is our essence. We're living from that place. That's where we're pulled. That's where creativity comes from. That's where we pull insight from. It just comes to us. It's a co-creation, collaboration with life. For the time that we're in these bodies. But it's like the cloud, like it's the matrix. We can download things. And if we just stay open and in tune, which is staying in contact with our sensations, staying connected to our feelings, our feeling state, without judging it, but just to experience it, experience life flowing through us, then we stay connected to that creative cloud, that deeper knowing, and it just guides us through life. And you no longer have to become defensive when you hear others speak their truth, because you know your truth. And it's not a mental truth. So I want to, yes. If anyone wants to come on stage, I see there's people tuning in from Facebook and others locations. You can't join the stage here, unfortunately. You'd have to be logged in under StreamYard. But those who are on StreamYard, please just say, raise your hand or say me in the chat, and then I can bring you on stage if you want to ask questions live. I know there's a delay, so I'm going to wait a minute or so. All right. Yes, Veronica. Okay. And you should see a message pop up on your screen.
Sorry. Sorry,
Yay.
2 seconds to get on. Hello. I have a question. Yeah. If I feel like I'm sorry, 2 seconds to get on. If I have like I feel like there's been a lot of I'm experiencing a lot of maybe other people with a lot of negativity recently. Is that something I'm manifesting? Is that because I'm in this place where I feel like I'm able to support people, or is that something that maybe is their own karma? Yeah, I would like to be able to support, but I'm wondering if there's a pattern that's coming up that a lot of people are coming to me
Mm,
with like different things that they'd like
mm,
healed,
mm,
and if maybe there's something that yeah, I don't know. Maybe if there's some pattern within me that's doing that, and I'm happy to help, but I'm wondering if there's, or like I'm happy to kind of share, but it's,
mm,
I'm not sure if there's something in me that's like not whole or wanting to
mm.
be something that I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it sounds like you're in the middle of exploring and noticing, is it me? Is it them? Is there something in me that's, manifesting this? My sense is no, it's just that you've become more sensitive and now you pick up other people's stuff, which is a great sign because it means your own stuff has subsided, and now you're available to, the universe makes you available to feel and pick up the stuff of others in order to be of service, in order to be of help, and when you notice the fear of others, does that show up in where does that show up in you? How do you notice this picking up of others' vibrations?
Mm, in my body, you mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, uh, I feel like sometimes it feels, sometimes I have this kind of like almost like not comedic, but kind of like like a warmness towards it. Like oh, I kind of know, I understand what you're saying. And then sometimes it feels a little heavy too. So I've experienced both of that, both the warmth and the heaviness of, I think, when people are, so like I've noticed also when people are complaining a lot, just kind of like this constant, and no, and I don't mind it in my life, but yeah, I'm not sure if that's something that's calling out for me to support them, or if that's just totally their own thing. I just keep seeing it.
Yeah. Well, that's there's a few different things in there, but it's fantastic that you're picking all this up. So even when you're noticing somebody's looping, around whatever issues they're sharing, you're able to just hold space for them and not feel triggered by it, and just almost, you're feeling compassion and empathy, and it sounds like there's no part of you that is rushing, that is rejecting what you're picking up and wants to remove yourself or leave the situation. So that's great. That's very powerful. Um, and you're staying in an equanimous place. Your mind is staying balanced and not irritated. You're observing, you're witnessing the suffering of someone else, and you're able to stay still and balanced. And in that state, your inner voice will tell you when it's time to leave. It'll tell you, okay, I'm fine with being here right now, and being of service. You are being of service simply by being there. You don't have to say anything, but your spaciousness is helping them express themselves, hear themselves. You're not injecting yourself into whatever they're talking about. And that is incredibly powerful and healing for them. They'll notice afterwards what the healing effect is. And this is why probably they gravitate towards you more and more, is because without really knowing it, that you're healing them, they just feel really good around you, and
Mhm.
they feel heard. They feel the power of just your presence. And that comes from being, and not so much what you say. But
Mm.
then for your own boundaries, as long as you stay in that kind of equanimous place, that balanced state, connected to your sensations of like your inner voice will respond to, okay, this is enough now. I've listened enough. I really need to carry on with my day. Or the energy that they're expressing is too toxic. I need, need to step away from this. I need to say something kindly, and and be on my way. Or I can, it's telling you to speak up, and be more concrete, and maybe offer some, suggestions, or work with the person. So there's those possibilities, and endless others. As long as you're really, really tuned in with yourself, it'll tell you, and you'll know what to do in each situation. um, there's also a state where this is a form of practice for you as well, and a growth opportunity for you as well, is to really work with these situations. It's not, you're not just holding space for others, but it's working on your space holding capacity. So
Mm.
you can keep this in mind, for lack of better words, is that, there's here comes the next person. They're saying things, they're expressing themselves. I feel their energies, whatever the nature of that energy might be. But this is also, I'm not just being of service here. I'm not just being used, but rather, what's in it for me, in a way, is like, what is the opportunity
Mm.
for me here, to, because you can grow even greater capacity to hold space for others, to hear your inner voice even more clearly. Hearing it is one thing, but then also learning to act by it. And it's like, okay, I'm feeling like I need to say something here, then to actually also say it, and learn to say it in a kind and compassionate way. So there's a strengthening of your core and your essence, in all of this. It's like, it's an exercise. Think of it as just, here comes the next exercise, and you're already noticing that people are gravitating towards you. So you have the power, you're emanating that. And now the fine tuning of each situation. And there's so many endless situations. So you kind of become more well versed in, like, okay, you just, this is how your power expands. It's like, I can handle this, I can handle that, I can handle every situation that comes along, as you just become very confident in your inner knowing of, like, nothing can harm me, nothing can get to me. I'm the container for the situation. I'm bigger than any situation. And just by practicing that through all these opportunities, you just become this bigger capacity person. So I would say, in part, you're there for them, but also view it as an exercise for yourself, to see what you can make out of this time around, the next one that comes along, and like, use it to self-explore. And they're coming to you for a reason. There's a reflection there of your it's endless, ever growing power that you are. And so there's, just stay really, really in tune with yourself, and into how to best use the situation. Sometimes you do have to step away. Just, there's a toxic person, and they're just vomiting toxicity, and you'll very quickly, again, still staying balanced, not just reacting to a feeling, but noticing, okay, I need to remove myself here, and then just do that. So just become more and more well-rounded, and more capable of handling any situation that life throws at you. And then life will throw more situations at you. That's your reward for getting more conscious. um, and But that's when we start to feel ourselves as bigger than ourselves. You're not just Veronica in this person that looks a certain way, a body that has a job, or this going on, and that's your That's an expression of your consciousness and awareness of self. So all of these opportunities, people coming to you, you're working your awareness muscle. And yeah, and then you just start to feel more as one, right? Part of the greater whole consciousness, and then you become untouchable by these little earthly situations.
Yeah. That's
Yeah. Always stay in touch with your sensations. That really is what grounds you. And one thing to notice that it's more advanced, but I think it sounds like you're there. Is to notice the the experience someone is seeking to have when they come to you, because you have enough awareness already to be able to, what is space holding, right? If to make it more concrete is just to tune into, this person is coming to me with they're seeking something. They're seeking to feel heard, to feel seen. They're seeking to express themselves and release energy or vent, or they are a little girl or a little boy and that hasn't didn't get a certain response when they were young, and now they're acting it out, reacting it over and over as adults. You can really tune into them and what their appearance is about. And that keeps you, that then you're really operating from awareness. Then it keeps you on their side of seeing them purely for who they are, and that's the most healing effect. Um, you're no longer injecting your own thoughts into what they're saying, like, do I believe this, do I not believe this, or is this for me, is this true? You just like stay with them, stay in their experience, and that is where you start becoming a space holder, a light worker, a light beacon, because you're able to just let somebody be. And that is the most powerful healing effect on the world. It's supporting life in the way it wants to express itself, by just letting it be as it is. No judgment, no labeling, no injecting yourself with your own uh, you know beliefs, but rather you've let go of those beliefs enough to just see somebody as they are. And it's not only super healing for them, that is an expression of your power, and that solidifies and grows that capacity within yourself of just being, because you have to be in order to let somebody else be. You're practicing, you're acting out the being. And so it's beautiful for yourself as well, and you just start to float and kind of glide through life, because all these hiccups that we experience are from overthinking, from constantly interrupting the flow. And to be is the flow, to be in the flow. So now you're bringing flow into other people's lives, you're smoothing them out with your own beingness. And sure enough, if they want advice, if they specifically ask for it, you can offer, do you want to hear something, or my impression or something? Because you'll get these hits of, this is what this person needs. But are they really open to it, or do I just, we don't have to pretend that we have to say everything or speak everything. The fact that you've received the download that this is what this person means, you incorporate it into your beingness, that you're beaming onto them. And so they will receive that message. You don't have to like engage. Words are super limited anyway. This is an energetic transfer of what they need that you're getting, and really just shine it on them. And then if they're ready, they'll hear it, or it might come to them later. It's just as a intuitive hit, and they'll never know it was you who transferred it to them. But we're all connected. We're all one. So um, it's isn't it, it's not a game, but it does feel a little bit like, nothing's that serious anymore. Um, you mentioned the word comical before, where like, yeah, it's just like, wow, this is how life really works. And it's kind of almost too easy once you get it. And you start to welcome these situations. You realize that, wow, before I was living in this kind of, I'm afraid of what's going to come next. I'm kind of like on the lookout for things that can go wrong in my life, or any situation that brings up feelings in me that are difficult. And you notice that you've transitioned into a space where, like, let's see what happens next, like more from a curious, open standpoint. It's like, oh, you recognize situations that arise. You've already described that. It's like you see, here comes the next person, and like, and so you're almost like, inviting the next moment, and recognizing it before it happens.
Mm.
Or as it's happening, right? Like, you're right on that edge of pure flow, of pure being, where you're so open because you're not consumed by your own thoughts. You're so open and aware that you just see the next situation and the purpose it has in your life for yourself, what the situation needs. That's becomes the focal point of your existence. And like, oh, okay, this is what the next situation calls for, either in myself or for the other person. And then you do that and experience yourself deepening in that way. And then the next training session comes, and you're like, okay, this is what's called for. So it's a very different way of living than before, maybe, when we try to think our way through every situation, and anticipate every situation and project what could happen. And then we're in resistance because it happened differently. And now we're in this reactive resistance state, and completely disconnected from anything. um, but there's suffering that comes from that eventually pushes us into the state that you're in, and where you start to invite life, and you're bigger than any situation. So I hope that resonates.
Yeah, no, that feels really right with a lot of things. And it's also a nice reframe back to, I think, what feels natural too, because it does feel like a really nice invitation sometimes. Like, oh, we get to do this together. Like, how nice. Like, we get to share this thing together. And it is a lot of gratitude to being welcomed into a place where someone's like, hey, I feel so open with you that I can share this. And instead of me thinking like, oh no, is there something I'm doing to call in all this? It is nice because it is. I feel like it is a moment to like explore just being humans together, and it's a nice place to play with another person.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's playing, and it's, ultimately the backdrop of all of this, like you just said, is we're just playing. We're passing time. We're healing ourselves, whatever. But it's just to recognize our humanity, and that there's an incredible world that we can play with while we're here, and to do that, and to be of service, right? So we spend so much of our life, consumed by our little problems, and then, or big problems, however we think about them. And then you reach a point like you're describing, where your energy starts to open up. You've done enough work on yourself, and you naturally become of service. It just happens, and people come to you, and so forth. And to be, you mentioned the word gratitude, to recognize that like nurturing, this is the design of life, is to focus on yourself, heal through others that have already uh, moved into being more of service, done the healing themselves, and now it's your turn. You become the person that can pass that on to others and hold space for others, and that gratitude of like, I get to do this, and that I exist right now this way, and get this opportunity to just experiencing is what I call it. That's really beautiful. So yeah, I would say just keep going, keep doing what you're doing. These are all, it never stops, right? Then there's the next layer and the next expansion. And yes, Tessa, amazing topic. And it just keeps going. And sometimes you'll need rest, right? Because you're expanding yourself, but life starts to take on a different rhythm. It's more continuous expansion with small periods of rest. And you might get tired. Oh my God, I have to grow again. And here comes the next situation that challenges me and grows me. And you'll recognize it when it comes. And then you'll be really grateful for when you have these down periods of, okay, now it's rest time. And just use the rest time consciously. Like, okay, I'm supposed to be resting now. I feel that. And self-care, sit by the beach and read a book, whatever it is, and do that from the same place of feeling called to rest, and not feel like, oh, I have to stay busy, I have to start the next project, or I should work more, or whatever, but actually use the downtime because your body, your mind is integrating the last growth spurt, and all the things you learn. Because that space holding at first is it takes a lot of energy, and you need to be in tip-top physical, mental shape. If you're tired, if you're not eating right, if you're sick, it immediately, your ability to hold space for others and be that witnessing presence, it just kind of falls apart. So you always have to continue to think of yourself first and take care of yourself first. The cup needs to be full before you can, and then from the overflow is the place from where you help others. There's a little risk in this, the danger that we allow ourselves to become depleted if you're always of service to others. And you'll notice that, right? And you just need to listen to that as well. It's time I'd love to be of service to you, friend or neighbor or family member, but I have to take care of myself right now. And that too is learning to set that boundary, because this energetic expansion it can be grueling sometimes. And I know you've had situations, especially recently, where life has forced you to go really deep and look within and question things, and those are in a way, the angels in our environment that bring that deepening to us, and to recognize that is the purpose. And there is no greater purpose than, even when we lose people close to us, that they have helped us expand in ways, and they're still there. My mom, I'm very lucky to have grown up with a very conscious parents, especially my mom, and she lost her favorite older brother when she was 16, and that woke her up, and that in turn, had her question everything in life and really become a much more conscious person, which she imprinted on me, which I'm so grateful for. So this light starts to spread, and we just we start to live in service of that light that is just red hot inside of you, and then now you're spreading it to others just by walking through the world.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. That was I see people commenting on this topic. So thank you. It's so great to see you as well.
Yeah.
there's I'm about to post a series of celebration videos from the uh, Yama retreat 1 year ago, and uh, I think you're in those.
Great.
Oh,
Good to
all
know.
right.
Thank
Wonderful. Wonderful. So great to see you.
you.
Chat with you later. Thanks. All right. Um, let me just read through the comments here. Yes, Tessa, struggling with having boundaries from people and not absorbing their emotions. Unless I will be so tired of absorbing. There is a thing where, just as a highly sensitive person, HSP, a highly empathic person, that it has less to do with spiritual growth and awareness and greater consciousness, but it just has to do with the way you're naturally wired to be very attuned to people's emotions. And that's kind of separate. It really happens before spiritual awakening. The greater consciousness is taking over your life. It starts to supersede that and replace that. But there will be, for just a highly empathic person, this challenge of, I was one of those, this of just feeling everybody's emotions. And how do you deal with that? So, setting the boundaries, like you say, just knowing when to keep your distance, step away, and avoid certain situations at first, that's probably the most practical advice I can give. And but in the meantime, you're growing and you're becoming more contained through other experiences, through work. If you can do the inner work, then that will supersede just kind of this empath quality, which is very rare in humans. I'm surprised by. You think it'd be as herd animals that we'd be more attuned to what people close to us are thinking, that everyone would have that quality, but it's fairly rare. And so it's a gift, and it will eventually lead you to be able to tune into other people even better, more closely, and in combination with it, doing the inner work, it becomes a superpower, and so that will, everything is a gift. We really have to look at ourselves and recognize that all the ways that we are different from the norm, which there is no norm, are things that make us special, that are eventually become our superpowers, become our path, become our calling. They are not to be felt guilty about, or we shouldn't shame ourselves or anything. It's it makes us unique. Yes, Ida, I wish you good luck in that situation. And you're taking the first steps. What seems difficult, but I know you'll get through it. And you're taking the step past your fear. You can allow fear to be there. All emotions, we tend to want to push them away if they're difficult, and we tend to cling to the ones that are pleasant. But all feelings can be experienced without letting them stop us, without letting them control us. So you can feel fear and anxiety and still move ahead. You can feel the joy and elation of achieving something and not cling to it either, and just feel it as it arises and then move through it. Tomorrow's another day. You can't just linger and rest on your laurels for very long. Tony Robbins says you can't eat at the table of success for very long. I like that. Life continues always. So we're going to do a quick meditation here at the end. We'll do some thought awareness, simply focusing on our breath. And that will be the capping of today's session. And wherever you are, that might be the end of your week or maybe the start of a new one for others. So let's get into a comfortable position. And with our eyes and mouth closed, focus on the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. If you have trouble locating your breath, you may breathe slightly harder once or twice. And once you feel the touch of your breath, return to natural breath, normal breath. Let the detail of your breath pull you in closer into presence. If your breath is shallow, let it be shallow. If it's deep, let it be deep. If it's more in the left nostril, let it be the left nostril. If it's more in the right nostril, let it be the right nostril. Or if it's both nostrils, let it be both. Notice the temperature of the incoming breath. Notice the temperature of the outgoing breath. Notice if there's a difference. Notice the pace of the incoming breath. Notice the pace of the outgoing breath. Notice if there's a difference. Notice the length of the incoming breath. Notice the length of the outgoing breath. Notice if there's a difference. And whenever you find that your mind has wandered, simply notice it. And without frustration, without disappointment, without dismay, bring your attention back to the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. Natural breath, normal breath. Seeing your breath as it is, without wanting it to be different. And when you feel ready, you can gradually blink open your eyes, relax your body. Notice your environment. Notice yourself in your environment. Notice the aliveness in your body. Notice your connectedness. I want to thank everyone for coming, for allocating the time. Stay connected in whatever you do to your sensations, to your awareness, to who you really are. Till next time.